Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a beautiful 12th November 2022, day after the Remembrance Day. Yes, come up the podcast. It's episode 192, Remembering, Awakening, and Standing. My take on Remembrance Day and the politics that have been plaguing us as of recent. All that and more come up the show. Please stick around. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. I do smoke cigarettes and say a lot of bad words. Please stick around.
Hit it, sweetheart. Because I am hard, you will not like me.
Yes, sir.
There is no racial bigotry here. Here you are all equally worthless.
From Western Canada, this is the Crusty Canuck podcast, a Canadian veteran's point of view on political, social, economic issues and life. Here's Crusty.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 192, Crusty Canuck podcast. Remembering, awakening, and standing. How I remember, how I have been awoken or awakening, and how I'm still standing. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Crusty Canuck, on this beautiful 12th of November 2022. Now, this is not an episode where I'm just going to sit and rant and rave. As always, I'm going to reflect on some personal experiences and share with you some of my nightmares and stuff when it comes to my experiences overseas. Now, a lot of experiences have varied over the years. In no way am I in comparison to some Korean vets or World War II vets. They were in country for a matter of years. I was in theater my first tour, about 4 months, didn't see much. It was more of a, presence, if anything. My second tour, I saw action. I was the radio guy, and I was with a team called the Omelette, operating and mentoring liaison team. Basically, we showed some of the Afghan military guys how to do things from a Canadian perspective. Needless to say, we did see some action. We lost a lad, and we had our share of drama and turmoil and chaos. And the results of that tour led me into some very, very dark places. Needless to say, I'm still here. I'm still alive and well. I'm employed. There's food in my fridge. I'm married to a great lady. I've got a great family. I got great friends. So the support is there, per se. But yesterday, gave me some time to reflect and hang out with some fellow vets, some British vets from their own experiences, some other vets from other operations, other tours, and just the camaraderie was fantastic. It's always good to reflect and remember what we are and what we have in this country, and what people before us have stood for, and what we should still stand for, regardless of how you personally feel about this situation or that situation or this party or that party. We should be thankful there's people that come before us that paid the ultimate price and sacrificed more than you can ever imagine. Some of us from my tours sacrificed quite a bit too. There's a few lads I think of from time to time. They're not with us today because of their ultimate sacrifice. And there's a few lads I know personally that ended their lives because of some of the demons and the trauma they've had to deal with. And it does sometimes get hard to explain that, ladies and gentlemen. But the more I talk about it, the easier it gets. I've had a great support network in regards to me getting my words out there and expressing how I feel and what's going on in my mind and all that good stuff. And you, my wonderful audience out there too, ironically enough, have been a big pillar of support as well. One of the reasons I do this podcast is to get information out there, to speak my mind. And I'm grateful that I have some listeners and some subscribers such as yourselves out there that take the time to listen to what I have to say and appreciate what I have to say with some of the kind comments and emails I've been receiving the past little while. But let's get to the meat and potatoes of this episode. Remembering. I do remember a lot of things, things I wish to share, things I wish not to share. There's a few people in my life that I've shared with that been there, and there's some other people in my life that have not been there. I'm not going to point fingers or play the blame game or anything like that, but Remembrance Day gives you a time to reflect on the people that just don't really care, too. And David the Menzies at Rebel Media put together a pretty interesting video. He was on the streets of Toronto talking to people about poppies and all that. And I'll just say that there was one person who had the audacity of saying, "Oh, no, I don't believe in it because of Canada's colonial past." Okay, well, you're entitled to your belief, lady, whoever you may be, whatever hustle and bustle you promote and what you do. But it's not just about Canada's colonial past. It's about people that sacrificed their lives for what they believed in. People that gave you the freedom to say that to somebody. And regardless of how you feel about this or about our history or about this country, you're still living in this country and you're getting paid Canadian dollars. And someone had to sacrifice something in order for you to walk around in that city to say those things. So regardless of how you feel about it or not, someone paid the price for your freedom to say that. Whether you agree with it or not, that's just the reality that we live in here too. And I had a few conversations over the past few days in regards to Canada's colonial past. And I'll remind you, my listeners too, that North America and South America were colonies one way or the other at one time. So we can't keep using that as an excuse not to look further and to embrace our history and embrace all of our cultures. Like it's, I still shake my head when people are talking about colonialism, and it's like, well, we could have been French, we could have been Spanish, we could have been Dutch, we could have been Belgian, we could have been any one of the big empires that thrived back in those days. What if England went broke and France got rich? What if Spain kicked France's butt? What if Spain kicked France and England's butt? Then what? We'd be Spanish? Would it be much like South America? What if Portugal just sat quietly and watched for a long time and then attacked and took over everything? Who knows, right? Who knows? But that's history. That's our part as Canadians, and to my American listeners too, and British listeners and listeners from all over the world, to embrace our history and to learn from it, regardless of who the bad guys were, whether it be the English, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, the Belgians, in some cases the Germans, any empire for that matter. Now, when I look at our country's history, we still lack real leadership. Our own prime minister is over in Asia right now. He'd rather be in Asia than take part in Remembrance Day ceremonies, even though he swore to look after veterans, right? Which you and I both know he's full of shit. It doesn't really matter. He doesn't really care. And he explains that he does care, but his actions speak louder than words. In fact, you look at all of these leaders in our country, their actions have spoken louder than their words. So when we reflect about the people that have sacrificed their lives for this country, really, really sit and just look at what the leaders are really doing about it. Some have said some kind words. Some have just sat in their hands. Some just don't care.
Stay updated and follow Crusty Canuck on Facebook, Twitter, Gab, Telegram, YouTube, and Podbean. Subscribe today and donate at crustycanuck.ca.
And like I've said before, ladies and gentlemen, if you like and hear what you see in this podcast, please click like, subscribe, and share this content all around your social media platforms too. The more you share, the more the algorithm goes, and the more my podcast gets out there and people get to see it and decide for themselves if they want to subscribe or not. So please share this content all over your social media platforms, and please comment, like, and subscribe in the meantime. Like I said, this is episode 192, Remembering, Awakening, and Standing. Yes, I do remember all the time. Every day, in a way, is kind of like Remembrance Day to me. Certain thoughts, certain gestures, certain actions. It's true. They say you hear a loud thump, your reaction is to duck. I get that sometimes. A few of my friends still get that. And and not because we're scared. It's just the way things go, right? There's still a lot of stigma out there too with PTSD, and I'd like to reiterate, too, ladies and gentlemen, you don't get PTSD from reading bad paragraphs or reading news stories that you disagree with or reading some kind of slander about yourself, or slander about this person or slander about this situation. You can get mad, you can disagree, and you might want to throw a table over or something, but you're not going to get PTSD from that. You get PTSD from actual experiences, not reading words, okay? Because if that were the case, then everyone who read a horror novel would have PTSD, or everyone who read a terrible story would get PTSD. So when you hear a writer or a so-called quote unquote journalist claim that he or she gets PTSD from bad words, then they're full of shit and they've got no guts and they got no gumption and they got no integrity and they've got a weak character. So that being said, later on in the show, I'm going to play a little video of some combat footage from 2006. And just to give some of my listeners and viewers too some insight on what Canadians have done in Afghanistan and the camaraderie and the excellence and the teamwork and the coherence that our troops have promoted. Regardless of what the political situation was at the time or what the political situation is now, I can verify and validate there are a lot of Canucks out there that are willing to stand on guard for thee, regardless of what politicians say or what the social media platforms say or what the mainstream media says. Because when I look at our politicians, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not seeing a lot of strength. There might be some leaders out there in the woodwork, hiding in the corner, haven't come out yet, but I'm not seeing a lot of strength. And this Remembrance Day proved it. Now, regardless of who you agree with or who you want to vote for, or who you think is going to come to surface come the next federal election, if we do have one, or if someone steps down, hint, hint, wink, wink. Justin, you know what I mean. I'm not seeing real integrity. I'm seeing a healthy opposition, and I'm seeing the bantering in Parliament. But what are these individuals going to do for you and me? I'm still a firm believer in not filing for certain politicians because I won't. And I highly recommend you, my wonderful audience out there, that you don't file either. And not because of roads or schools or the projected health crisis they keep talking about. I'm talking about principle. Because I know for a fact that every blue-collar worker in this country gets a lot taken off his or her check every 2 weeks. Yours truly gets a lot taken off his check every 2 weeks. Plus, I get a lot taken off my pension, too, for my 20 years of service. And why should we file more papers come April for an ungrateful government that just wants to spend and piss the money away when there are things that need to be done in this country, things that need to be looked after? Right. So I'll propose that to you, submitted for your approval, my wonderful audience. Not to file. I'll leave the links in my description. And you decide what you want to do. Now, I've had numerous debates with people in the Twitter world and out in public in regards to filing one's taxes and what you must do and civic duties and all that good stuff. And my awakening is this. Why should I be giving money to something that's going to be giving it away to somebody else later on? Right? And that somebody else is somebody outside of Canada or some other group outside of Canada or some virtue of some sort to make a handful of politicians look like they really care when they're doing nothing but squandering our resources and wasting our effing time.
Stay updated and follow Crusty Canuck on Facebook, Twitter, Gab, Telegram, YouTube, and Podbean. Subscribe today and donate at crustycanuck.ca.
Yeah, really, wasting our effing time, and for what? Because the past couple of weeks, there's been loops here about a strike here and a strike there, and people complaining about their human rights, and yet we still fail to realize that there are a lot of human rights violations over the past 2.5 years in this country in regards to the jibby jab and the pandemic and everything else. People have lost their jobs, lost their businesses, been fined ridiculous amounts of money. For what? Now, whether they went to court and proved their innocence or not, they still had to go to court to prove their innocence, spent a lot of money doing so. A lot of businesses went bankrupt. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost hope, lost their minds, hit drugs, hit each other, and some took their own lives. Is this the Canada I fought for? Is this the Canada I put 20 years of my life into? Is this the Canada that my comrades and my brothers in arms put their lives into? Even the ones that didn't return from my tour, from other tours, from other operations, is that what they sacrificed their lives for? Puts things in perspective now, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? It's like the old adage, why should I give 110% to you when you can't even fathom 20% for me? And from what I've gathered and what I've seen and what I've witnessed and the people I've talked to over the past couple of months, there's a lot of people that feel that way. Why should I give 100% to you when you can't give 20% back to me? Something to think about. Anyhow, I'll put this video up here for you all to watch, and then decide amongst yourselves. Now, it's not gory. There's no blood and guts in this, but there's combat. And to my listeners, listen carefully. To my listeners and viewers alike, watch and listen carefully, please. Gives you a pretty good perspective on what our men and women went through in that country.
Let's go, Bravo. Make sure you identify as you come around. Grenade! 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 Wait. Oh, it's starting to come to the wall. Let's trip the walls. Oh, who did that one? All right, boys. Who's that? Just put a couple rounds right there. Change your positions. You just had a big. Change your boxes, buddy. Don't do me! Hey, Tony, how you doing, bro? Changing marks!
Okay, hold on, guys. We're still seeing. Got ceasefire for a minute.
Hold it! Ceasefire, Brooklyn! Ceasefire!
M203!
Smitty!
M203! Smitty, okay? Smitty, okay? Launch your flag!
Got a lab facing that direction right now.
Bravo was receiving control earlier.
Bravo's right there.
Yeah, another 200. The fucking car's taking fire too.
That's our life.
Fucking Wayne was throwing grenades into coordinates.
Nice.
Yeah.
All the way down to the end. Yeah, to the right, to the wall. You put some into that grape drain. You're gonna be so
He's got to be getting low on ammo.
it's fucking too.
Okay, get behind something now. We got air burst 200 meters. Drop. Here it comes. Beautiful.
That little looks like it's just a wall. Yeah, that's what Mark shot.
West.
What's that?
That's a reality, ladies and gentlemen. Pardon the pause there, but that was the reality that some of the companies and some of the battle groups went through over there. Now, that's just a small taste of what some lads have seen, what a lot of lads have seen on a bigger scale, too, on a daily basis. Now, if men and women are willing to volunteer and fight in a foreign nation for this country, why can't our leaders step up and fight just a little bit more for us, for you and me? Eh? Why can't they promote liberty? Why can't they promote proper freedom? Why can't they promote democracy? They've all said, oh, you know, democracy at stake if we do this, or democracy is at stake if we don't let this protest happen or allow this protest to happen. Democracy is at stake when you stifle anybody who has something to say in this country, regardless if you agree with it or not. Now, I'm guilty of disagreeing with people and bantering online too. Okay. But that's the freedom to do it. That's the freedom to choose. That's the freedom of expression, freedom of speech, regardless of how you feel about hate speech or not. People are going to say hateful things regardless. People are going to say some stupid things. That's just life. Right? In the schoolyards, kids used to say stupid things. Some of the teachers used to say stupid things. You go to a hockey game, you hear stupid things. Any soccer games, baseball games, okay? Any kind of conglomerate of people, you're going to hear stupid things. We're adults. We're supposed to handle it. Unfortunately, we have adults in power that don't want to handle it because they have some virtue. Those men in that footage, their virtue is this: standing on guard, doing their job, fighting the enemy, winning the firefight, so they can go home. Go home to their loved ones. Remember their loved ones. Remember the fallen, too. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people in this country that forget that. or they just don't want to pay attention to it. And that's fine. You don't have to. Nobody in their right mind agrees with warfare as far as I'm concerned. But there were necessary evils in our history that proved it had to be done. World War I, World War II, Korea. Peace support operations, peacekeeping operations, peace enforcement operations, Vietnam, regardless of how some of my American friends disagree or not. There are a lot of people that stepped up the plate and thought they're doing the right thing because they thought it was their duty. There are people that served in capacities that needed the adventure, that needed the job, and wanted to do it because they believed in it. And you can't condemn people for doing that. So, to me, every day is Remembrance Day because of what I did, what I saw, what my friends did, what they saw, to what our fallen brothers and sisters did. Service. And that should be respected regardless of what decade you're in, what generation you're in. You can sit there and call soldiers murderers. People don't join the military for the sake of killing. People join the military because they want the job, they have an aptitude for it, and they like what they do. Some people join the military because they need adventure, they need something else. They want to try something else on. And during that time, while they're trying something else on, they're called to go over here, or they're called to go over there. That's life. Do you think police officers join the police departments Canada-wide because they want the adrenaline rush to arrest somebody? They want the adrenaline rush to pull out their service pistol to shoot somebody? Or they want to serve? Do you think firefighters join the fire department because they want to watch things burn? Right? Do you think doctors become doctors because they want to have the power to cut somebody open to see their innards? No, people make the choice to do things in the name of serving humanity. And every one of those jobs, we get lost along the way, one way or the other. But I'm not saying every soldier out there is a nut bar. Nor is every doctor, nor is every police officer, nor is every firefighter, paramedic, anyone who's in public service. But that's being taken for granted. And this past Remembrance Day, that's proven to me. Especially when our leaders fail to show up. Okay. Now, Veterans Affairs, apparently there's a 43-week waiting list for some guys to get their benefits. That's pitiful. That's unacceptable. That's not the taxpayers' fault. That's the government's fault. That's the leadership's fault. Okay. And I've said in my last episode, too, the lackluster leadership, Ms. Freeland, talking about the whole, well, maybe you should cut back on your TV shows, save some money. That arrogance is self-explanatory. So a lot of people just showed up to get their brownie points, and a lot of people just don't care. Now, I'm not expecting every Canadian out there and every listener to this podcast to care 100%. But next Remembrance Day, do yourself a favor and just spend a minute or two thinking about the men and women that did fall for this country. And I'm talking all Canadians. I'm not just talking about one group or this group or that group. I'm talking about all Canadians. All Black, all White, all First Nations, all Asian, all East Indian, other members of the Commonwealth too. And reflect on the sacrifices that people made. And awaken to the bullshit that they have to put up with in their memory. And stand up for this nation. Yes, we are imperfect. That's democracy. It's imperfect. But I'd rather live in an imperfect democracy than a totalitarian state any fucking day of the week. At least we can still speak our minds in this country, hopefully. Without that costing more money later on. But we have to fight for that. We have to honor that and respect that. Especially what our ancestors fought for and died for. Whether it be the fields of France, in Holland, or in Afghanistan. All I can say about my time there is that I will never, ever forget what I saw and what I did. I'll never forget the friends I made. I never forget the looks in their faces when I crack some jokes and when they crack some jokes. I'll never forget serving. That's my reflection on this 12th of November, 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope nothing but good things for you and yours. I hope that we can reflect on easier times next year. Let's hope. Let us pray to whatever gods you believe in. All right. I will be around again next Saturday for another episode of the Crusty Canuck podcast. I'll be heading back to work again tomorrow, so I'm back to my schedule again. But because I took the 11th and 12th off, I'm going to miss a couple days' pay. But it was worth it. Just to hang out with some of my veteran buddies again, to reminisce, have a few drinks, laugh, share some jokes, share some stories, and reflect. And remember who came before us and who fell before us and who might have to fall for us again. It might be you and me. I don't know. In these trying times, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's being planned as we speak? But the leadership in this country has really got to change. And I'm talking totally 180. I don't care what side of the fence they're on, but I'm not seeing any kind of, balls to get the job done. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, this has been 12th November 2022. I've been your host, Crusty Canuck, on another successful episode of the show. Do what you can to help each other in these trying times. Things are getting tough for some people out there. So give a little bit extra to your food bank if you can. Helps each other out with gasoline if need be. Maybe shovel some snow. Just try to be neighborly and just try to be kind to each other as the best we can. If you like and hear what you see, please click like, subscribe, share this podcast all over your social media platform. I'm now on Spotify now too. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see the links there, or just follow the links in the description once I post this show. So like I always say, do what you can to help each other in these trying times. Look out for each other. Keep our wits up, keep our chins up, and we'll get through these humps. And like I always say, ladies and gentlemen, humanity merit wins the day. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Hit it, sweetheart. Because I am hard, you will not like me.
Yes, sir.
There is no racial bigotry here. Here you are all equally worthless.
This has been another episode of the Crusty Canuck podcast. Stay sane and thank you for listening. From Western Canada, this is the Crusty Canuck podcast.
Well, smack my ass and call me Judy.